That's really interesting. I think another thing that I wanted to ask, I was quite interested in asking you about is the idea of there being perhaps a Chelsea philosophy and a kind of way of thinking that the Chelsea Academy thinks. And I guess the real question is there a kind of defined Chelsea philosophy, or is there more kind of pragmatism and adaptation to different scenarios?
I think a lot of it, when you're a bit younger, there's sort of a philosophy, the whole style they want you to sort of play with a bit of freedom, expression, but also play good football, playing out from the back, always encouraging us to sort of play from goal kicks and passing football and not holding onto the ball too long, but also giving us the freedom to sort of express ourselves in the final third, that little bit of magic,
Mm.
but at the same time moving it quick. Like there's almost that whole. There wasn't. I think when you got older, there wasn't exactly a strict philosophy. Like you might say there's like Barca have a certain way of playing. They always
Yeah.
play that. There was a lot of adapting because even when it came to games in the checker trade or we were playing more even in our league, we might play Everton away at Southport, and that was always a really tough game. We had to adapt the style of play. It wasn't like, oh, we're just going to continue playing out from the back. Sometimes we thought, oh, we're going to put ourselves under pressure here. We need to kick it long from a goal kick and then work off that. And it was almost the main philosophy I would say at Chelsea is almost non-negotiables. The whole work rate, the way you conduct yourself on the pitch, setting standards, always doing the simple things right. I guess that was always a given. You needed to do that, and the coaches always instilled that in you. But the actual way we played was it varied game to game, but always the philosophy or the way we wanted to do it was going about it the right way. We didn't want to win ugly. We'd rather lose and play well and good football than win playing the sort of Route One football, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it did change a lot, sort of between I'd say from under 16s to 23s is when it sort of is more adaptation. Because before that, sort of the making mistakes and trying to play out, it was never a question. You just the more you did it, like if you made a mistake, you just um, made sure the next time you didn't sort of make that same mistake. So they're always encouraged to play out and try things and express yourself. And I guess when it becomes more and more um, competitive games, you're in the youth league, youth cup, and checker trade games, you obviously have to adapt to the opposition you're playing, but still then trying to play that same good football and start that attacking style of play. And yeah,
You mentioned the Checker Trade Trophy. Obviously, it's changed names so many times over the years, but
yeah,
it's it is the EFL Trophy where
yeah,
yeah, Papa John's Trophy now,
yeah,
but the competition where you have uh Cat One academies playing against League One and League Two sides. So that's the first time you and I assume most of your teammates are playing against men.
yeah.
And you were actually the captain for the side that went on the run to the semis. So what was that like playing against men for the first time, and how do you think you managed? How was it that you ended up doing so well?
I think it was obviously amazing being able to say we competed with league teams and did that well. And I think for us it was always that whole proving people wrong. Um, I think I've said it before, but obviously at the academy there was always that whole aura about 23s footballs just it's just a load of rubbish basically, and people should be going out into the first team and in the first team environment and playing men's football. And I think not having a chip on our shoulder, but we just wanted to prove people wrong because a lot of people disregarded 23s football and thought academy football was false. It's not like the real men's game that you're going to get in sort of the lower leagues. It's almost just prepping you for Premier League football. So we came with that sort of almost like we was the underdogs, and we'd go into games just competing, making sure we worked harder than them, doing the ugly stuff, winning second balls, winning headers, that kind of thing, making sure we were matching them in all those aspects, and then let our good football come through. And I think the group's weird because obviously if you draw a game, it goes to penalties, and I think we had two of those, ended up winning those, so you end up getting 2 points instead of one, and then beat Exeter, and obviously we're in the knockout rounds. But in those games, they were really good games, and probably out of those sort of 6, 7 EFL Trophy games you play in the season, probably count more than the 22 league games you have. Like see, you develop more in those type of games. You find out what kind of person you are, what kind of like how you deal in those situations, and almost how you cope in the men's game. So that we obviously get to the knockout round and are flying through there as well. I think we beat MK Dons 4-0, Oxford 3-0 in the quarterfinal, and then I think Portsmouth was in the round of 16. That was a tough game. I remember Charlie Masonda got a last minute free kick, and you couldn't have wrote it. Like for us, that was like our biggest game of the season so far, and they got equaliser, and then Charlie scoring in the last minute it was unbelievable, and we just thought we're in the quarters now. We could maybe go the whole way, and the Lincoln game was on Sky Sports, which is always, any televised game at our level was always another added bonus, and it's another way to show what you can do to more and more people. And I think we made a really good account of ourselves. Obviously lost on penalties, but that was a really tough place to go, and it was a really tough game. I don't know if you ever watched it or remember it, but they had like
I did, yeah.
air sirens every time they had a throw on or a corner. Just the whole thing, just bombing balls in the box. But we just hung on, and then obviously penalties is obviously the worst way you can go out. It's like so heartbreaking, but we were that close to going to Wembley. So I think even to this day, the academy's sort of really proud of our achievements, and I think we as a group take that everywhere we go, and I'll never forget that. It was the best experience, and obviously being able to captain that side as well was great.
Yeah, that's really, really nice to hear. So you talk about playing against men, but I guess the other thing you were doing while being one of the more senior heads in the academy setup was training with men, training with the first team. So I wanted to ask you about your experiences in that. I know you trained under multiple different managers, maybe the differences between them, and just what it was like.
Yeah, it was always amazing. You'd never really know you were training with them until the morning of the session.
Mm.
That was always a little bit nerve-wracking as well. And like you said, playing under different managers. I think times I trained up with the first team, that was Mourinho in his second spell, Conte, Sarri. They were sort of the main managers who were there at the time. And I think for me, it was always really nerve wracking. You'd go over there and you don't necessarily know anyone. They're not your team, but you'd seen them on TV and you'd watch them at Stamford Bridge. So it's almost like you knew them, but you didn't. Then John Terry was always that, when he was there, especially, was always that really welcoming figure. I think because he obviously came through the academy himself, he knew what it was like, and he was very young when he sort of broke into the first team. So he'd always make sure we felt welcome and comfortable enough, so we obviously be able to train to the best of our ability and show what we could do. And he'd always say sort of, make sure you can do something that makes you stand out. So whether that was just going in for a 50-50 or winning a big tackle, it makes people think, oh, he's obviously come to join the party. He's not scared. He's fearless. He's brave. So he'd always encourage you just to play how you normally play, because he used to watch a lot of academy games when we were in the youth team. So he kind of knew us when we went over there and knew what we were capable of. So he just wanted us to make a good account of ourselves and show them what we could do, because he was always sort of promoting the youth to come up and play. And I think the different managing styles, it was funny because sort of the later years when Conte was there and a bit when Sarri was there, it was a lot more. I don't know if it's the Italian style, but a lot more tactical and
Yeah.
quite passive. You do quite a lot of drills that were unopposed, but working on shape and the philosophy he wanted to play and the way he wanted to play, in formation and going through passing sequences that might occur in the game, and there wasn't too much sort of small-sided games and those possession-based games, that sort of the things players might look forward to. There's a lot of sort of disciplined work and regimented work, but it's probably to not the players sort of not what they wanted, but it helped the team a lot. If you look at the success Conte and Sarri both had, winning the league and Europa League and that kind of thing, and they did that way. Their style of coaching worked, so you can't really complain. But I think it was obviously a lot different to what we used to do in the under-23s football. A lot of possession-based games and small-sided games and working in smaller areas and a lot of competitive stuff. It was a bit more relaxed. Not as strenuous, not as. But then again, at the same time, you felt like it was more relaxed, but it was high intensity because the quality that was there. So you're playing with the likes of Hazard was training, and he's just a different level. So it's like everything you do, if you're trying to defend against Hazard, you need to think 2-3 times quicker and try and think a move ahead because you know he might put the ball through your legs or that kind of thing. So it was more probably physically less strenuous, but mentally way more strenuous. You just had to be on it all the time, just concentrating to your maximum. Basically, you couldn't switch off at all, and if you did switch off, they weren't afraid to let you know. You being the sort of young player coming across, they weren't afraid to sort of show you the level and say, look, come on, this is what it's like. So many a lesson was taught, trained over there, especially from the likes of sort of Fabregas. He was another one of those who's just a true quality, world-class player. So being able to share midfield with him, you just didn't want to make a mistake, so it raised your level a lot.